Hi, I'm Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint a Blightlord Terminator. For this I'm going to be using Lord Felthius because the actual model itself has loads of details that other Blightlord Terminators have, so I figured he'd probably be quite a good one to start with. Now Lord Felthius is a great model for showing the different techniques of the Death Guard because he contains so many of them. So you can do the bone, we can do rusty mail, he's got tentacles growing out the floor and out of his body, we've got dripping goo, we've got smoke on the back, maggots coming out of his cape and under his armour. We've got the armour for his greens, we've got the metal for his blades, goop dripping off the blades as well, so there's lots of different things that we can work on. Now I'm doing this as the painted model for the video, and then these guys down here are going to be for a post to the blog. So the first colour that we're going to use today is going to be Vallejo Russian uniform, World War II. Now I recently learned that the names of some of these have changed, or they don't make them anymore, but you can use any similar kind of colour for it, and this is just going to be to do shoulder pads. When we come back, we're going to have all of this green finished. The next colour that I'm going to apply is Vallejo Model Air Rust. I use this for the brass colours on them. I've had this Model Air Rust quite a while now, and I think it may be separating a little bit, which is why it seems to be going on streaky. But it's not a problem. If it starts to go on streaky, just give it another coat, and that should fill in the streaks nicely. When we come back, we'll have all the Model Air Rust finished. The next colour that we're going to use is Citadel WWII Red. We're going to be using that to do his cape and the inside of his mouth. When we come back, we'll have finished all of the WWII Red. The next colour that we're going to use is Citadel Mournfang Brown. I'm going to use that just to do the back of his cape. On the back of his cape there is a lot of maggots in here, but we're going to just get the whole thing brown first, and once we've done that we can go back and colour in all the maggots. When we come back, we'll have all the Mournfang Brown finished. Next up, we're using the lighter shade of brown that I'm going for, which is Vallejo Flat Earth. This has got a slight leathery look to it. I can do this on all the sections that have got no fur on this side. When we come back, we'll have all of the Flat Earth finished. Now we're going to use Citadel Beige Brown. When we come back, I have all the beige brown finished. Now we're going to use some Citadel Ricarth Flesh. Just going to use that to do the bony spines growing out his top. When we come back, we'll have all the Ricard flesh finished. Now, since the last clip, I've added Mornfang brown to this section, and I've also added beige brown to this section. Now we're just going to use a little bit of Vallejo German Cam bright green. I'm just going to use that to paint up all the goop and the drips. When we come back, we'll have all the German Cam bright green finished. Next we're going to use the Citadel technical paint, X-Ray Flame. It's a great paint for getting things to look like they're glowing. When we come back, we'll have all the X-Ray Flame finished. Now we're just going to do his skin using a bit of Citadel Deepkin flesh, this to give him a bit of a sickly and rotting colour. Like so. Just going to add a little bit of fulgurite copper to his side. Like so. Continuing with the metallics, now moving on to Citadel Lead Belcher. I'm just going to do some of the tubing and some of the parts of his side with this. When we come back, we'll have all the Citadel Lead Belcher finished. Next we're using some Vallejo Model Air Chrome. That's going to be to do some of the tubings, bits of side, his chainmail, a few other little bits on him. When we come back, we'll have all the Model Air Chrome finished. Now I'm just going to use a little bit of Avalon Sunset to do the tubes on his front. Like so. We're just going to go back to Vallejo Model Air Rust. I'm going to paint this fly on the front of him in that colour and use that as a base because I'm not happy with the brown. like so. We're also going to use a little tiny bit of Ricard flesh just to do these 3 kind of boils on his knee. Like so. The final base colour that we're going to use is Citadel Xerius Purple. I'm going to use that to do tentacles that are growing out of him. When we come back, we'll have all the Xerius Purple finished. Now we're moving on to the shades. The first one we're going to use is Citadel Seraphim Sepia. When we come back, we'll have all the Seraphim Sepia finished. Now we're moving on to a Grax Earth shade. We're going to use that for all the browns and the bronze sections. When we come back, we'll have all the Grax Earth shade finished. Okay, so the video cut out. What we've done is we've applied Citadel Druchii Violet to his cape here, and also to the tentacles. We're just finishing off the tentacles and part of the cape now. Like so. Next, it's Citadel Null Oil. I'm just going to use this on all the silvery metallics. When we come back, we'll have all the Null Oil finished. The final shade that we're using is Citadel Cassandora Yellow. I'm just going to use that to go over these pocks on his knees, just to give them a bit of a yellow tint before we work on them some more. May end up painting over it, we'll see how it looks. Actually, the final shade that we're going to use is Dragonhof Nightshade. I'm just going to use that on his face. Now we're only going to be doing a very thin shading of it, so there's not going to be too much. We don't want it too dark. So I'm going to get that into all the details on his face, and then we're going to try and absorb the excess shade with the brush. I'm going to add one tiny little bit more of Druchii Violet into his mouth. Like so. Last but by no means least, I'm going to use a little bit of BL Tan Green just to do all the goo that's oozing out of him. When we come back, we'll have all the BL Tan Green finished. Now after the shades, the first thing that we're going to be working on is his armour. So we've made a mix of white and Citadel Ushabti bone. We're just going to paint this on, making sure that the Seraphim Sepia is left in all the recesses. When we come back, we'll have all this armour finished. Now I've got the armour coloured, I'm going to use Seraphim Sepia. I'm going to start adding some weathering to his armour and pieces of the metal tubing and his side. When we come back, we'll have all the Seraphim Sepia finished. Next we're going to do exactly the same, but this time we're going to use a Grax Earthshade just to add some darker rust patches to the side and the tubing, and also add some darker weathering to his armour. You don't want to be adding as much as this as you did the sepia, just a few runs with a few little different colours to it. When we come back, we'll have all the Grax Earthshade finished. The final colour for weathering is just a little bit of null oil. Just going to add a few tiny streaks to his armour just to add the third shade for the weathering. Like so. Now we're just going to use a little bit of Rakarth flesh to recolour the spines going out of his back. When we come back, we'll have all the Rakarth flesh finished. Now we've just added a little bit of white to the Rakarth flesh. We're just going to highlight these bony spines. When we come back, we'll have all this highlight done. We just added a little bit more white to that mix. We're just going to give it one final quick highlight. Like so. The next colour that we're using is Citadel Ushabti Bone. We're just going to be using that to paint all the little maggots which are coming out of his cape. When we come back, we'll have all these maggots painted. We're just returning to Mournfang Brown, and we're going to be using that just to go over each of the bits of fur on his cape. As you're doing this, you might spot a few maggots that you've missed. If you do, just carry on doing the brown, and then once we finish the brown, you can go back and just paint up any maggots that are brown still from the undercoat. When we come back, we'll have all the fur finished. Now we've added a little bit of Vallejo beige brown to the Mournfang brown. We're just going to highlight these little bits of fur. You don't want to be painting the whole length of each piece of fur, maybe only about 2/3 of the length, so you're leaving some of the Mournfang brown there. When we come back, we'll have all the highlights done. I've added just a little bit of white to the previous mix just to lighten it again. Just going to do one final highlight on the fur. When we come back, we'll have the final highlight finished. So I've mixed a little bit of Uriel yellow with white. I'm now going to go around the model and paint all of the little boils and pustules. When we come back, we'll have all of these boils painted. Now I've just mixed a little bit of Xerius purple with Vallejo Modeler rust, and where these tentacles join onto the brass coloured armour, or the bronze coloured armour rather, we're just going to start trying to blend that in a little bit. Like so. Now we're going to add a little bit more Xerius purple to that mix. Add another little bit of Xerius purple to it. And finally we're going to add one last little bit of Xerius purple to that. So it's almost pure Xerius purple now. And just highlight the very edge of the tentacle. Like so. We're going to work on the tentacles that join the cream coloured armour now. We're going to do exactly the same. So using the cream armour mix that we've already had, we're just going to add some of that. We're just going to add some Xerius purple to that. Now we're going to add a little bit more Xerius purple to that mix, so it darkens it up again. Like so. Once again, add more Xerius purple to the mix. Completely missed this tentacle here, so we'll just add to that now. And finally we're going to add one last little bit of Xerius purple to the previous mix. It's going to be almost pure Xerius purple now. And just do one final little mix on the very edge of the tentacles. Like so. Now we're just going to highlight the brass using some Vallejo Modeler rust. You don't want to be doing too much highlighting on this because it is meant to be dark and grubby and dirty, so just along some of the edges. When we come back, we'll have all the model air rust finished. Now I just added a little bit of Skull Crusher brass to some Vallejo model air rust. Now I'm just going to do one tiny little highlight on all the bronze coloured areas. Like so. Now we're returning to his face, so we're going to use Citadel Deepkin Flesh. We're just going to start building up the layers for his skin. When we come back, we'll have all the Deepkin Flesh finished. Now we're just using some Ulthuan Grey, and that's to do a highlight on his skin. When we come back, we'll have all the Ulthuan Grey finished. Now we're just going to use some Citadel Ushabti Bone, and use that just to do his teeth. Like so. Now we're just going to be using a little bit of white just to do his eyes. Like so. We're just going to use a little bit of black just to do his eyes. Like so. Now we're just going to use the same mix that we used to do the boils on his cape, just to do this little spot by his nose here. Right there. He's got a little lumpy bit on his mouth there, so we're going to paint that with the same colour. And finally, we're going to use some Carrowbird Crimson. We use that to do around his nose and his mouth. Like so. We're just going to finish working on the yellow tubes on his front. We're going to reapply some Avalanche Sunset. Next we're just going to add a little bit of Flash Gits Yellow, and that's just to brighten up the tubes. Like so. Next we're just going to use some pure black just to do stripes on the tubes. When we come back, we'll have all the stripes finished. Now we're going to work on the tentacles. I'm going to use a little bit of Gene Stealer purple just to highlight the ends of those. When we come back, we'll have all the Gene Stealer purple finished. Next colour is Emperor's Children from Citadel. This is just to do the final highlight on the tentacles. When we come back, we'll have all the Emperor's Children finished. Now we're returning to Citadel WWII Red, just to work on his cape at the back. Now I'm not doing too much on this, just bringing the colour back out in a few little patches. When we come back, we'll have all the WWII Red finished. Next, we're just using a little bit of Carrowbird Crimson. We're going to darken up some of the spots on this cloak where it looks like there's open wounds or sores. Just darken the areas around them. Maybe do a few little runs. We're also going to use this to stain some of the fur on the back of his cloak. When we come back, we'll have all the Carrowbird Crimson finished. Okay, now we're going to be using two colours at the same time. That is Nurgle's Rot and Blood for the Blood God. I'm just going to make these wounds look a bit grim and messy. Now the effect I'm trying to go for here, just adding a little bit of Blood for the Blood God to just bloody up that kind of mucus stuff that's coming out. Give it quite a rancid, disgusting look to it. When we come back, I have all the gore done. Next we're reapplying the German Cam Bright Green. I'm going to be working on the dripping liquids on his side and coming from his hand here. We've just added some white to the German Cam Bright Green. We're just going to highlight all the tubing and all the drips as well. When we come back, we'll have all this highlight done. Now we've added a little bit more white to the mix. We're just going to do another highlight to the drips. I'm going to leave the tubing now and just do the drips themselves. When we come back, we'll have this mix finished. We've added more white to the mix. We're just going to do one final layer of highlights before we just add white to it. When we come back, we'll have all this highlight finished. Now we're just going to be using pure white. And this is going to be to work on the smoke on the back. When we come back, we'll have all the white finished. Now we're just going to add a little bit of rust effect. The first layer is going to be typhus corrosion. We're just going to be painting that onto some of the metallics that we've already discoloured. Like so. Next colour we're using is Citadel Riser Rust. I'm going to use that just to go over the areas we've done typhus corrosion. I'm also going to use that to discolour some of the tubing and like the chainmail. Give it a bit of a rusty look without having to use typhus corrosion first. Like so. The final thing we're doing on the model is going to use Citadel gloss varnish. I'm just using this on all the liquid to give it a final shine, to make it look like it is still wet. Okay, so I had them all finished and packed away. I've just managed to get everything back out again so I can paint them. So what colour did I miss? I was looking on Instagram and spotted one of my earlier ones and realised that I hadn't done nihilak oxide on the bronze parts of them. So I'm just going to use this to do a few little bits to add a little bit of verdigris to them. When we come back, we're definitely going to have the last layer finished. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel below so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media listed below. Thanks very much.